Hi there, it's Jen from modernmedicinelady.com and the Empathic Woman System. And this is a video that is in response to some questions that I got from a client. And I figured that if she's asking them, then other people are probably asking them too. And the question that she was asking was, we had done some work and we did some tapping, and the tapping alleviated a lot of physical pain that she had been experiencing for a number, or I don't know if pain is the right word, but a physical experience, physical sensation that she had been dealing with for a number of years. And we basically took some time and worked on it. And over the course of about an hour, we were able to really clear it so that the symptoms had really settled down. And the question that she asked is this all in my head? Do you mean that I've been suffering for 3 years and basically, and then it just went away? And so my answer is, on one hand, yes, it is in our head. However, it is not in our thoughts necessarily. It's not just that psychologically we have some issue and it's in our physical sense, it manifests in our body. And when people usually say, oh, it was all in your head, I think for one thing, there's this way that we tend to dismiss stuff by saying it's all in your head as if you could think your way out of it. And I think that is incredibly dismissive and also just really obnoxious. Because our emotions affect so many different parts of us and really get stored in our body in a really interesting and unusual ways. And so to say that it's all in our head, I think really invalidates the power of emotions and the power of how our experiences affect us. That said, the thing is, there's this part of our brain that is called the amygdala. And the amygdala is basically the mechanism within our brain that is the fight or flight mechanism. And it was developed, it's like our reptilian brain. It's the part of us that knows when we're in trouble that we either need to get a lot of energy up to fight, or we need to get a lot of energy up to flee from it and run like hell. And the thing about the amygdala, which is this little part of our brain that is inside of our brain, is that we are programmed to respond to distress and to respond to danger and difficulty, basically by setting that off. And what it does is it starts a cascade of hormonal responses in our body that gets our adrenaline going and basically gets us to respond. Now, back in the day when we were running away from saber-toothed tigers and avalanches and really needed to figure out ways to get ourselves safe, having that part of our brain working is what kept us alive. And if you think of it this way, we are the survivors with the overreactive amygdalas. We are we are the people whose ancestors were the ones who were better at fighting and better at fleeing than anybody else. And I was saying to my husband the other day, the other thing that we are is we are all the product of the sperm that won. We're the product of the most aggressive sperm. So we have a certain biological wiring to basically fight, flee, and also to win. And so this works great for a lot of things. However, it doesn't necessarily work so great in modern society because we do not have the same kinds of mechanisms for letting go of those stress hormones as we did when we were running away from saber-toothed tigers. And so what happens in modern day is that we get our amygdala going, we get the brain started, and then what happens is we send out this cascade of hormones that gets us to flight or flee. And it just keeps going and going and going. And you're probably aware of how stress affects the body, of how hormones affect the body, of how so many different, how basically, and how stress can cause a number of different responses, physiological responses in our body. So when the amygdala gets triggered, and we open it up and it starts sending these fight or flight hormones and basically these messages, these neurological messages to protect ourselves, we then go into this cascade of response, which ultimately can start a whole bunch of other things, including physical responses in our body. So the thing about EFT is that, or tapping, is that it is specifically designed to basically reboot or reset the amygdala. Because back in the day when we were running away from saber-toothed tigers, we would run it off. We would basically exert so much energy that we would reset ourselves. But in this day and age, where a lot of times the stress is looking at our Facebook feed or reading the CNN headlines or watching television these days, we get that stress reaction and we get that fight or flight response, but then we're not doing anything physically to actually reboot it or reset it. And so what ends up happening is that we end up in this situation where we're in this cascade. It's like a tape loop or a feedback loop where the amygdala just keeps on sending these signals of danger, 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 stop, 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 deal, do something. So when we are, hey there, Carrie. So when we are dealing with this response, what's happening is that it escalates on itself and it sort of cascades on itself. And what it will ultimately do is it will cause an incredible amount of distress to the body, which will cause an incredible amount of inflammation and response. So to respond to the question that, I realize this is an incredibly long response, but to respond to the question about how this is working, yes, it is in our head, in that it is our head that sets off this whole cascade of neurological responses that then basically gets our body in a state of reactivity and in a state of inflammation. And so the reason why EFT is so remarkably effective at dealing with not only things that are emotional in nature and sort of mental and mindset in nature and belief oriented in nature, but also for addressing physical sensations, is that EFT will reset and stop the amygdala from being in that cascade of reactivity. And when we stop the reactivity, we give our body an opportunity to respond in a completely different way. So and the thing is, miracles can happen when we give our body the opportunity to react or respond in a different way. Because if we have a cascade of reactivity and a cascade of inflammation going on, when we stop the mechanisms in our mind that are causing that inflammation and causing that reactive cascade, then what happens is it gives our body a chance to decompress, and basically it takes the pressure off of the parts of the body that are feeling the sensation or feeling the discomfort. So, for example, if you have a pinched nerve and that's being caused largely by, or isn't being caused at least partially by inflammation, when we tap, we can decrease the inflammation. And by decreasing the inflammation, we can decrease the sensation. Now, I'm not a scientist, nor am I a doctor, and I don't play one on TV. So I am giving you my understanding from the research and the reading that I have done about the way that EFT works. What I can tell you from personal experience is that I have personally experienced relief, profound relief from physical sensations and discomfort in my body by tapping on it. And I have also worked with a lot of different clients around this, and just basically by working on and tapping on the experience or the sensation, we've been able to shift it. And like I said, I personally believe that the reason this is so effective is because we are actually calming down the reactive cascade in the body and allowing the body to not be in a state of inflammatory response anymore. As well as, one of the other things I have found is that often we will have a stressful situation that gets almost like, I'm trying to think of the word, but basically tag teams with some kind of physical sensation. And we may not even be aware of how some event or some experience or something, it might have been incredibly inconsequential if we look back at it even. Like it could be seem like, why is this such a big deal? But because we were already in a state of distress, we were already in a state of reaction, we were already not feeling fantastic, and then some emotional situation comes along or some challenging, stressful situation comes along. It's almost like the straw that breaks the camel's back. And then what happens is things start to associate, they sort of link together and they compound each other. So we end up in a situation where in order for the pain to be released, we need to unwind and release some of the stuff that it got associated with. And so they basically kind of act like feedback loops where they mirror each other and they basically reinforce each other. So, for example, I've had a lot of intense sound sensitivity for a number of years. And at one point, I was doing some tapping and work with another coach on my own sound sensitivity. And I realized that part of what had happened was I had had this experience at a parade when I was probably about 6 years old that was really stressful. And the combination of an accident that happened at the parade where I got hurt by being, I actually got brushed up against by a guy who was smoking a cigarette, and he basically, burned me with his cigarette. And the noise at the same time, for my nervous system, suddenly I was associating noise with physical discomfort. And so I had, after that, whenever things got really loud, it felt literally kind of like it was like this burning, uncomfortable sensation. So by doing some work around first recognizing that weird connection between that feeling of that burning sensation and reaction to noise and letting go of that original memory, what ended up happening was I was able to really decrease my sound sensitivity and not feel as reactive because I was able to basically dismantle that association and disconnect it. So, hopefully, what I've just talked about and explained is making sense to you and gives you sort of a feeling for the effectiveness of EFT and why, while on one hand it is in our head because our amygdala is inside of our brain, on another hand, when saying it's all in your head, it's not just all in your head. It's in your head and then it's in your entire system because the whole body then responds to the reactivity, to the stress, to the cascading hormones, which then causes chronic inflammation in the body. So, EFT, emotional freedom technique, also known as tapping, or also known as meridian tapping because it's following along the acupuncture meridians on the body, is in my personal experience one of the most effective ways to really neutralize stuff, to calm things down, and to help our bodies and to help our minds relax and release and let go of stuff that's not serving us anymore. And it can get really, you can get all kinds of elaborate, you can use all kinds of bells and whistles, there's all kinds of stuff you can do, but the very, very fundamental basics of EFT involves basically putting light pressure or tapping on certain points on your body, generally around your head and your face and your hands, and then under your arm and your collarbones, and basically thinking about the thing that is going on. So if we're going to be doing some work on a physical sensation, say you're experiencing a little bit of discomfort, some part of your body, or a lot of discomfort, what I like to do is just sort of check in, evaluate what I'm feeling, notice how I'm feeling, and generally I will rate it just so that I have a feel for what's going on. And if I'm doing EFT alone, what I'll do is I'll have a piece of paper next to me and I might write a number down on a scale of 0 to 10. How much intensity am I feeling at the start? And just notice what's happening in my body, how I'm feeling, or, I'm talking, we're going to work on physical sensation right now instead of thinking about emotions. But Anyway, just writing it down, going, so on a scale of 0 to 10, like for example, right now I'm feeling maybe a tiny, tiny twinge of sensation in my right shoulder. So I would say it's probably like a 2 or a 3, but it's a little tiny bit of stress in my right shoulder. So I'll think about that. I'll write down that 2 or 3. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to acknowledge it by doing what's called the setup with EFT. Now, this is using the side of the hand point, and interestingly, I just read something recently that was suggesting that we start calling it the side of the hand instead of the karate chop point. So bear with me while I make this transition. But so we're starting with tapping right on the side of the hand with your 3 fingers here and just doing a setup. And the setup is really simple, and we're going to keep this real simple right now. So even though I'm feeling this, and you would describe the sensation in your body. So in my case, even though I'm feeling this little twinge in my shoulder, and then you're going to use some kind of a positive statement. I choose to relax anyway, or I love myself anyway. The old classic is I deeply and completely love and accept myself. So we're just going to do that. So even though I'm feeling this sensation in my shoulder, you obviously fill in the blank, I'm going to love myself anyway. Even though I feel this little twinge in my shoulder, I'm going to love myself anyway. Even though I feel this sensation in my shoulder, I love myself anyway. You could choose, I'm going to relax about it anyway, I'm willing to accept it as it is what it is, I'm okay, anything that feels workable for you. So you're just going to do that setup 3 times, and you don't even necessarily have to. I like starting with the setup, it's classic EFT recipe. And then, so after we finish tapping 3 times on that, we're going to go to, some people start with the eyebrow points. I personally just like to start at the top of the head. And so we start right at the top of the head. And what you're just going to do is you're going to use a very simple reminder phrase, this feeling in my shoulder, this feeling in my feet, this hot sensation, this whatever. And, we're not going to go into a lot of detail. We're just going to say this blah, blah, blah. So, and then the next point is your eyebrows. It's like right at the top of your eyebrows, sort of right where your eye sockets and your eyebrows and your nose all meet. And again, you're just going to think about the sensation, and you're going to say this sensation, this feeling, this pain. So in my case, it would be this twinge in my shoulder. And then we're going to tap on the sides of the eyes, right here, sort of right where my glasses are, but just tapping along the side of the eyes right here. And just, again, this feeling that's coming up for me, this twinge in my shoulders. And now we're going to tap right under the eyes, right on the eye socket, and directly underneath your irises. And again, just this feeling, this twinge in my shoulders. Then right between the nose and the lip on the Cupid's bow, I'm going to tap there, this twinge in my shoulders. Obviously, you say what works for you. And then underneath the lip, between the lip and the chin, this feeling in my shoulders. And then on the collarbone, this feeling in my shoulders. Another possibility is that you can also tap on what are called the sore spots, which are a little bit further over, and when you tap on them, you can they're kind of on your pecs. So you can either tap up here on the collarbone, or sort of a little bit further, kind of under, more towards your underarm. And you can kind of feel it. Like if you tap around, you can actually feel it. And if tapping is not working for you, if it feels weird and uncomfortable, the other thing you can do is you can just gently massage, put a little bit of pressure on it and gently massage those points. And that's another way to work with it. And again, we'd say the reminder phrase, this twinge in my shoulder. The next point is underneath your arm. It's kind of like directly under your armpit, right parallel to where your nipple would be, if and going past your breast tissue, if you're female, right on your rib cage. So it's sort of like right there on the side of the arm. So that's the underarm point. and then coming back around to the top of your head. And that's one round of EFT. And then what I like to do is take a deep breath and just evaluate what's going on and see how the sensation has shifted and if it is feeling a little bit better. And so right now I would say that sensation that was in my shoulder is down to maybe, like a 1. Like it's definitely decreased. There's a teeny tiny awareness of sensation left. And so if I was going to be working on this and really wanted to shift it, what I would do is this remaining 1, this little sensation in my shoulder, this little sensation in my shoulder, this little bit of a twinge in my shoulder, this little sensation in my shoulder, this little bit of a twinge in my shoulder, this little bit of a twinge in my shoulder, this little bit of a twinge in my shoulder, this little bit of a twinge in my shoulder, this little bit of a twinge in my shoulder. Taking in another deep breath, checking it out, and that pretty much shifted it for me, so that at this point in time, that just released the twinge in my shoulder, which feels so much better. So it's that easy. And basically, there's really, there's no wrong way to do it. You don't have to follow a specific order. If you just tap on the different points and you can just notice what's working for you. Another thing you can do if you're in a situation where either you're in public and you can't really work on doing this is that you can just massage the side of your hand while you're talking or something like that and think about what it is that you want to be letting go of. So just sort of massaging. Or this is another point on the top of your hand. It's called the gamut point in EFT. It's known as the triple warmer in acupuncture. And you can just massage that or just gently tap on that as well. And, these are ways that you can just kind of acknowledge what's going on. I like to sort of massage it sometimes if I'm just sort of noticing that I'm feeling a little uncomfortable or something. And these are ways that you can support yourself, that you can help yourself, even if you're in a public situation. You can just, take in a deep breath and just let yourself work on the points that don't look really weird. I mean, for that matter, you can kind of work on the side of the eye. You can definitely, work on the collarbone point without looking too strange. Or, just even if you hug yourself and touch underneath your arm again. And if you're in a situation where you're feeling some stress, and you have a moment to just excuse yourself, go to the bathroom and do a round of tapping, and that can really, really help. Now, I know that there are a lot of, hey, Belinda, honestly, this is one of the most effective ways to work with pain that I have ever personally discovered. Welcome, welcome. It may seem surprisingly simple. And if you go back, I don't know if you just joined me, but if you go back and watch this video, I talk about why it works, how it works, and how to go about doing this. So EFT, as I was saying, is just so incredibly easy and simple. And a lot of times people will be like, well, I don't know what to say, or I don't know what to say, or I don't know how to do this, or it's too, how do I go about it? And I just want to say the very fundamentals of EFT is all you ultimately need to start working with this. Hey there, Grace. So glad you could join me. Yeah. And all you really need is really straightforward. It's really simple. We start by acknowledging what's going on. And just, very, very simply, you don't have to get into a lot of detail. As a matter of fact, sometimes I think, especially when you're feeling a lot of intensity about something, it's actually more effective to just kind of be like, yep, even though this is uncomfortable right now, or even though I'm feeling this way, that it doesn't have to be like a litany of stuff, that it can just simply be, even though I feel this sensation in my blah, blah, blah. And if obviously, speaking to your body can be incredibly effective. And one of the things I really like to do is actually when I'm not really sure where something's coming from, and particularly when I've done a few rounds of tapping to take the intensity down and to take the, take the sort of the fever pitch down on the sensation, Then what I'll do is I'll tap on the collarbone point, and I'll just close my eyes and I'll talk to either aloud or in my head. But I find personally it's easier to work by talking aloud as long as I'm in a place where I have the privacy to do it. And I'll say, I wonder what this is really about. I wonder I wonder what kind of story my body is trying to tell me. I wonder what my body wants me to know. And then I'll just close my eyes and I'll tune in. And it is amazing how often our bodies will answer that question when we ask it directly. And you might be amazed at the bizarre or like almost seemingly random things that our body will have associated with a particular sensation. It's kind of remarkable how, and in my personal experience, it's like, wow, I had no idea that one little tiny thing that happened is still going on, or I'm still holding on to it, and it's still affecting the way that I feel in my body. But going back to just the simple, it's so straightforward. We start with a setup, tapping on the side of the hand, and just basically even though I'm feeling this way, and then the positive statement of I choose to relax about it anyway. I choose to love myself anyway. I choose to accept this the way it is. I choose to approach this with a great deal of curiosity. Whatever works for you, there's no wrong way to do it. And if you don't know what to say, then you can always go back to the basic setup or the old school Gary Craig, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. So we're doing that 3 times. I reverse my hands simply so that I can keep track of the fact that I've tapped 3 times. That's the only reason I go back and forth. And then, like I said, either starting at the top of the head or at the eyebrow point, and all you need to do is say this, or even, the pain in my shoulder, 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 the discomfort in my stomach, the discomfort in my stomach, the tingling sensation in my hand, whatever it is that you're experiencing. And that sensation, this sensation, this feeling, this feeling, this feeling, this feeling, this feeling, this feeling, this feeling. And you don't necessarily want to move as fast as I just did. The point, I was just using that to explain it or describe it. But basically, you're going through the points and you're saying the sensation and the feeling. And once you've done that, once you've expressed the sensation and expressed the feeling, as you get back to the top of your head, taking a deep breath, evaluate what's going on and see how it's feeling, if it is shifted. If you noticed anything, you might have had thoughts come up, you might have had realizations come up, who knows? And even if you're tapping and something seemingly random comes up, like all of a sudden you start thinking about how pissed you are at your boss, or some conversation you had with your mom the day before. Anything like that, if you're tapping and it comes up, chances are there's some connection between the way your body is responding and what it is that came up into your mind. And so, in the case of something like that, then what you can do is you could even say something like, even though I recognize that conversation with my mom really made me feel, I'm just going to love myself anyway. It's safe for me to let this go. And you can start tapping through all of that. Excuse me, I am getting a scritchy throat. So the basics of EFT are really delightfully simple. You do that first round, you check in, you see what came up for you. And then if you have more stuff to work with, then you do another round and you just tap on it until you're feeling like it's really calmed down and you're feeling better. Now, sometimes us human beings will get to a place where we're at a manageable state, but we're not necessarily all better. And we'll be like, okay, that's good enough. I invite you to go beyond that. Like if you were at a 10 in discomfort and you managed to get yourself down to a 4 or a 5, that's great. If you can, and I really invite you to just do another round or 2 to see if you can get it down to a 2. Because once you're down at like a 2 or lower, your body will continue to unwind it and it will let it go on its own. But you deserve the relief that you can get from doing a couple additional rounds of tapping. And obviously, if you start tapping and you notice that the tapping is helping to shift it, then clearly it's doing something and more of it will help as well. So that is how to work with using tapping for dealing with physical sensation. It's an incredibly effective thing. I have found a lot of relief. Like I said, I've worked with a number of people where they have also felt a lot of relief. And like I said, I believe the reason that it works so well is that it basically it stops reactivity and the cascade, the stress responses in their tracks, and it gives our body a chance to reboot and decompress. And that's why I think it is so incredibly, incredibly effective. And it really does affect our entire nervous system. And even if we have a mechanical health or physical issue in our body, it's our nervous system and our nerves that are responding and expressing the pain. So when we talk directly to the nervous system, which is what EFT does, we have a chance to at least relieve and alleviate the discomfort, even if we're not necessarily going to change what the physical problem is. So, like, for example, if somebody is suffering from, physical paralysis, EFT is not necessarily going to stop somebody from being paralyzed, but it could potentially help the nervous system to get some relief from, say, like ghost pain or something. So, or for example, I know of a story of somebody who had metal, I don't know, hardware in their body from an accident. So they actually had like plates in their body, and that there was like reconstruction in their spine. That's not going to go away, but the way that the nervous system is responding to it can be shifted. And that's the beauty of EFT, is that we can shift things by responding to our nervous system in a whole new way and stopping that cascade. So that is pain. And as I said, I think I had mentioned or sort of written that I would also talk a little bit about using EFT for stress. It's pretty much as simple, and can be as simple, where you just acknowledge, even though I'm feeling stressed about blah, 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 I deeply and completely love and accept myself. And then this stress about blah, blah, blah. This stress, this stress, this stress, this stress, this stress. Now, a lot of times, if there is a specific thing or incident or memory that is associated with something, when you realize what you're associating the stress with, what would be very helpful is to tap down the stressful moment that you experience, not some huge event, more like for example, you're more, I'm just going to use an example, like it would not be effective to tap on World War II. But it could be, it is effective to say tap on the moment that the bomb hit at Pearl Harbor. So when working with tapping on specific events, you want to get as precise as you possibly can. And usually like a 30-second incident, working on neutralizing the emotional charge on that is much, much more effective than neutralizing, even though I'm really pissed off at my mother for 30 years of being obnoxious. That's not going to work as effectively as one specific memory where something happened that was really frustrating to you, and you're tapping on that. So when it comes to tapping on stress, you can certainly tap on general stress and acknowledge it and let it go. But if there is something that comes up for you where you recall an event or an experience or a memory, tapping and neutralizing that is going to give you more relief than just focusing on the general stuff. Now, I will just finish off by saying that one of my favorite things to do also is basically doing tapping, or sort of working with the pressure points and breathing. So acknowledging what I'm feeling, what's happening for me, and then just sort of massaging the area and just taking in a breath and breathing in calmness and peace and letting go of my stress. And then massaging the top point, the top of the head, and just breathing in calmness and peace again, and letting go of stress. And then eyebrows, breathing in calmness and peace, And just letting go of the stress or the worry. Sides of the eyes, breathing in calmness and peace. And letting go of stress and worry. Under the eyes, breathing in calmness and peace. And letting go of stress and worry. Under the nose, breathing in calmness and peace. And letting go of stress and worry. Under the lip, breathing in calmness and peace. And just letting go of any stress or worry. I don't know if you can see, my body is totally calming down. Breathing in calmness and peace. And just letting go of stress and worry. Breathing in calmness and peace, touching the underarm point. And then just letting go of stress and worry. Back to the top of the head, just breathing in that calmness and peace. And just letting myself let go. And that is so fast, so simple, and can really make a huge difference. So, if anybody's watching and they have any questions before I jump off of this Facebook Live video, please, let me know so that I can respond to anything if you're curious about it. Hopefully this is giving you a good sense of, number one, how incredibly simple it really can be. Just either light pressure or tapping on the points, using your breath to breathe in calmness and ease, letting go of stress and worry, but that's not even necessary. That is not necessarily part of EFT. But just acknowledge what the issue is and then tap through the points by just saying, this issue, this issue, this issue, this issue. And it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be complex. You don't have to go into a lot of detail. You don't have to talk, you don't have to talk out loud, although I do think it can be helpful to do that. And just really letting yourself acknowledge what's going on, focus on it, and tap through it until you can feel the emotional charge and the physical charge and kind of that energy where you're kind of holding on to all of it. You can feel it let go and release and feel yourself settling down and calming down with it. Now, there are obviously situations where it can be more complicated, where, say, there's like a cluster of events that have happened, or something has a big, long-standing history, and the EFT, you can work with it. And in those particular cases, it's layers of the onion. You may find yourself working at peeling back layer upon layer. And at times, if you find yourself in a situation where it's kind of a neighborhood you don't necessarily want to go in on your own, there are a lot of remarkably gifted and talented EFT facilitators and practitioners here on this planet who would be more than happy to give you support in working on some of the big stuff. So you can do this yourself. That is one of the beauties of EFT, is that you can do this yourself. And when you feel like it's something that's a little bit bigger than you want to be addressing yourself, that's when getting in touch with somebody like me, or going to the AMET or AMET website, aamet.org, I believe is the correct. I'll put the right link down there to be sure that I just gave you the correct link. But going there and looking for somebody who is a good, skilled, certified practitioner is a great way to get some help when it's a little bit over your head, or you feel like it's territory that you just like some support to work on. So I am so glad you popped in. I'm so glad that you came over to check this out. Belinda, I welcome you to EFT. Miracles happen. It is absolutely amazing what has happened for lots of people, and I highly recommend, if you haven't discovered the tapping solution, that you check out the Ortners and the tapping solution. They actually have a book specifically for using tapping for physical pain, and can really go into and talk even more about the ways that you can work with this to get relief. but it is possible to get profound, miraculous relief for using EFT. So, Grace, so glad that you joined me. And I don't know if you caught the part where I was basically saying that it is a sort of, it's not all in your head the way they describe it, you know, in terms of it being thoughts, but that it is, yes, it is in our head because it starts in our stress response in the amygdala in our brain that starts a cascade of reactivity that causes inflammation, that causes stress hormones to continuously release, and basically then affects our entire nervous system. And when we use EFT, we can calm down our nervous system and we can allow our body to decompress and to reboot the system. And that allows our body to start healing because our body is not in a cascade of reactivity anymore. So the joke is, yes, it's in our head, but it's in more than our head. It's also in our body. And by addressing that part of our brain that's in that cascade of fight or flight, we can then really shift things so that we don't have to be suffering anymore. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to leave comments below on this thread or on this video, and also please feel free to PM me. If you haven't already done it and you're curious about where you fall on the empathy spectrum, go take my What's Your Empathic Type quiz at empathicwoman.com. And while you're at it, please like my Facebook page, go subscribe to my YouTube channel, and keep coming back. And until I see you again with a word of the day or another live video, so much love to you all, and peace, peace, peace.